Now let us go ahead and create a template for our servers on which we are going to set up big data cluster. We'll be checking quotas and we'll be using 2 vCPUs and 8 GB RAM to create the template, and we'll be using that template to create the servers so that we can use those servers to set up multi-node big data cluster. Here I am connecting to the Windows based machine and then launching Chrome. You can directly get to the console of Google Cloud by saying console.cloud.google.com. It will directly take you to the Google Cloud console. You can see the dashboard for your account, and it have chosen the default project. Make sure you are in the right project. And then if you want to create instances after creating the template, first you can go to Compute Engine, go to quotas, review your quotas by clicking on this IAM and admin quotas. And then you can actually change the metric to CPU. And you can review the values. It is 24 limit on each of these regions. You have to choose one region. We'll be creating on US East 1 by default. You need to make sure that you have enough quota in your region. You also need to understand if you have any other servers, how much resources it have already taken. And then based on that, you have to strategize about creating the servers to set up big data cluster. Now we can go to this sandwich icon, then click on Compute Engine. It will take you to the Compute Engine dashboard. You can directly create VM instances here. However, if you start creating VM instances directly from here, it might not standardize all the instances. You might be creating instances with different configurations, and it will be nightmare to manage. For each purpose, we will be creating a template, and we will be using that template to create the virtual machines rather than creating virtual machines directly from here. To create a template, you just go to Instance Templates here. Click on Create Instance Template. You can see the name. You can give whatever name you want. In this case, I am giving it as Big Data Server. And then I'll be using 2 vCPU and 7.5 GB combination. If you want to have non-standard configurations, you can also click on Customize and you can change these values. However, I'll be using the standard 2 vCPU based configuration with 7.5 GB RAM. The number of vCPUs has to be multiples of 2. So you cannot have 3 vCPUs or 5 vCPUs. Odd numbers will not work. Once you choose the machine type, you have to change this by clicking on this and choose the appropriate operating system. In this case, I want to use CentOS 7. If you want a particular image to set up, you can choose those images also. However, we'll be using standard CentOS 7 to get started, and we will be performing necessary steps to set up big data cluster on the CentOS 7 based servers. After choosing the operating system, we also need to increase the boot disk size to 32 GB so that we have not only operating system but also enough storage to stage the yum repositories or to get the log files, etc. You need to at least give 32 GB for any boot disk on any Linux based servers. Okay, then we can click on Select. This is bare minimum. In actual production environment, we might have much larger values for boot disk because on our servers we'll have much bigger hard drives than these values. However, for our learning purpose, 32 GB is enough for boot disk. Once that is done, you just create and it will create a template for you. Using this template, you can create the virtual machines. And whenever you try to create virtual machines with this template, by default, it will choose a machine type with 2 vCPUs and 7.5 GB RAM. It will try to set up CentOS 7 on those machines with 32 GB as boot disk. And we'll be using this to create virtual machines before we actually set up the cluster. We will be using the term called servers for big data than virtual machines, because in actual real-time environment we'll be most likely be using bare metal servers to set up, not virtual machines. Just for exploratory purposes, we are using cloud platform and trying to provision VM instances from Google Cloud to see step-by-step process about setting up the clusters. From here, we will be creating the virtual machines, and we will talk further about how to set up cluster on these virtual machines using GCP with the $300 credit.